Hey there and welcome back to the episode 3 of this shell scripting course. Now guys, before we dive into shell scripting, it is important to familiarize ourselves with some key terms related to shell scripting and Linux. These terms will be frequently repeated throughout the course, so let us prioritize learning them first. Now the first term that we have here is the terminal. So when Linux was originally developed back in mid-80s, there was no idea of implementing a graphical user interface GUI, which meant that there was no sort of visual representation of any icons or images that user could move or click. So as a result, there was only one way left to interact or communicate with the computer, and that was through the use of the terminal. Now the word terminal comes from the term terminate, which means that it is the terminating end of a communication process. Now the image you see here is of a TTY or teletypewriter. So it was the first type of terminal, and instead of screen you would have a literal typewriter in front of you. So when you type on it, you would see the text on a piece of paper, and those words which you have typed would be sent to a computer connected to it. Now, when that computer replies against your request, the typewriter would automatically type the response onto the same paper. So this is the actual basic concept of a terminal, where you would have only text-based environment and a system would take input from you and would show the output while the real work happens at the other end on a large mainframe computer. But now, as we all know, things are significantly different in today's world. So now when we talk of terminal, we refer to a literal software version of our teletypewriter. As usual, it only allows you to enter text-based input and receive text-based output in response. And now instead of having a large or mainframe computer, the interpretation is done by the default shell available in the operating system. Few popular examples of terminal in Linux are GNOME terminal, Terminator and console. And by the way, GNOME terminal comes by default installed in most of the Linux operating system, and this is the one we are going to use in our later videos. Now let us have a quick look at the interface. So here we are on our Kali Linux home screen, and on the top left corner over here on the taskbar panel, you will notice a black icon which says Terminal Emulator. So if you click on it, the terminal window will open for you. Now when you start a terminal, you will notice a prompt over here. So this prompt generally resembles your username and host name. Okay, so this right here on the beginning is your username. Now since we have set our username to Kali, which comes by default, it's showing Kali. And then this right here is for your host name, which means the machine name. It is used to identify which machine you are working on. And as you change your machine, the name over here changes. Next up, we have computer commands. And upon hearing the term computer commands, some of you might wonder if it is related to instructing the computers. You are correct. Computers' commands are nothing but instructions given to a computer to perform a specific task. When you want to perform a task or obtain an output, the very first step is to communicate your request to the computer. This can vary from task to task and computer to computer. For example, if you have a Windows PC and want to create a user account, you would certainly go to the settings option, then account, and click on add user. You would then set a username and password, and a new user account would be created. But let's say you have a computer that runs on Linux operating system and you need to perform the same task of creating a new user account. Of course, this time your approach would be different. Instead of going to settings menu, you would open the terminal, escalate your privileges to the admin level and enter some text into the terminal. Now regardless of whether you click on icons with your mouse or enter text through your keyboard on a black and white terminal, each step you take is a command for the computer. Now since we have modernized our computer so much, a user can give a command to the computer in generally 4 different ways: through a command line interface such as shell, a graphical user interface, voice recognition or gestures. But since this course focuses on shell scripting, we will concentrate on command issues through the command line interface or shell. So a computer command is a specific order from a user to the computer's operating system or hardware to perform a particular service. It can range from a simple task like opening a file or folder to complex operations like installing software or configuring network settings. Now let us understand the next term, binaries. So you will often find people using the term binaries in different contexts, such as a collection of binary file, installation files, .dll files and more. But let us learn exactly what this term means. Now when we refer to binaries, we are simply talking about the executable files. This executable file contains computer readable code, also known as compiled machine code, which can be directly executed by the CPU as the commands are stored in the form of series of bits, zeros and ones. These binaries are created when programmers or developers compile their source code. In simple terms, they convert the code from a high-level programming language such as C, C++, Python, etc. to a low-level programming language or assembly code using a compiler. Now for better understanding, we can compare computer binaries with ready-to-cook meals. Just like a meal kit contains all the pre-measured ingredients and instructions for a specific recipe, similarly, computer binaries are self-contained files that include all the necessary compiled codes and instructions for a specific program or application to run successfully. Ultimately, the goal of computer binaries is to provide a convenient and streamlined experience for software distributions and execution. Moreover, it also ensures compatibility across different hardware architectures and operating systems, allowing software developers to distribute their application to a wide range of users, and on the other hand, allowing users to install, run and utilize applications on their computer systems. Moving forward, let us discuss the concept of root in Linux. So in the context of Linux, root is a user account that is present in all Linux-based operating systems. This root user account has access to the highest level of privileges and permissions by default, making it the most powerful user account on Linux among the normal user. As a result, it is often referred to as the super user. The root account is by default created during the time of installation of Linux operating system and has a user ID or UID of 0 and group ID GID of 0. These IDs are important as it distinguishes the root account from the regular accounts. Now, because of full administrative privileges and unrestricted access to the entire system, a root user can modify the system in any desired way, which includes installing and removing software, changing system configurations, adding or removing users, executing privileged command, granting and revoking access permissions for other users, and much more. However, the system assumes you know what you are doing and will execute your command exactly as requested, no question asked. Therefore, it is easy with a mistyped command to wipe out crucial system files. The rule of thumb is never sign in as root unless absolutely necessary, and while root, type commands carefully and double check them before pressing enter. Sign off from the root account as soon as you have accomplished the task you signed in for. Now let us take a look on the terminal window. Now what I'm going to do is type a command called whoami. So basically what this command will do is that it will display the username of current user logged into the terminal session. So whoami and hit enter. So you can see it shows Kali, which is the name of current user logged in into the terminal session. And if I type ID and hit enter, you can see it shows the user ID of Kali, which is 1000, and group ID of Kali, which is again 1000. And by the way, Kali is the default name on Kali Linux operating system. So whenever you have a fresh install of Kali Linux, it will always show the username as Kali. Now to log in into the terminal session as a root user, we type a command called sudo su. So sudo here stands for super user do and su stands for switch user. So I will type the command sudo su and then hit enter. Now it's asking for the credential of the Kali user. So enter the password, and by default the password is also Kali. So type Kali and hit enter. Now as soon as I provide the credential and hit enter, you can see the prompt here changed to root@Kali. And as I told you previously, the first prompt here represents the username. So it's showing that we are logged in as root. So root@Kali. You can also verify it by tapping the whoami command. So if I pass the whoami command and hit enter, you can see it shows root. And if you want to pass the id command, let's do that. And if I hit enter, you can see the user ID of root, that is 0, and the group ID also is 0. Now the reason behind user ID and group ID as 0 is because the root is the very first user that is created when you install a Linux operating system. So that is it. And if you want to exit out of the root user, you may simply pass the command exit. So if I hit enter, you can see the prompt again changed back to Kali. So that's all for this video, guys. And if by any means you are finding this video and course to be helpful to you, please hit a like and subscribe, as it keeps us motivated and allow us to reach more further audience. So that's all for this video, guys. Have a nice day and stay safe.